There is nothing more painful than thinking your secret is well hidden when in reality it's not. Thinking that you have everything under control when actually you're walking into a trap. I discovered this when I got served divorce papers from my husband, who I've been married to for just 2 weeks, all because I cheated. I'm as shocked as you are, honestly, but for you to understand me, you need to know my story. So I'll start from the beginning. Hey Redditors, my name is Fiona, and I am a 27-year-old woman. My husband, or should I say soon-to-be ex-husband, Eric, is a 28-year-old man. We've been married for 2 weeks and live in the United States. Eric and I first met on a regular Tuesday at college, though I later dropped out and never graduated. I spotted Eric while we were both scrambling to find the same dang textbook in the campus bookstore. We reached for it at the same time, and our hands crashed together as if it was a textbook battle. Cue the awkward laughter. We locked eyes, and there it was, that spark you hear about. He shot me a friendly grin, and we both cracked up at the ridiculousness of the situation. Our laughter was so loud that it drew puzzled looks from fellow students, but we didn't mind. Our first date was nothing fancy, just a local diner with those old-school neon signs and the smell of burgers frying in the air. Eric said he'd pick me up, and I remember the butterflies in my stomach when he knocked on my door. Once we settled into a booth, the talk just flowed, full of laughs and swapping stories. He went for a classic cheeseburger, while I opted for a veggie wrap, showing off our different tastes. With the background noise of clinking dishes and distant chatter, we found out we both loved 90s sitcoms and had some questionable music choices. Soon moving in just seemed like the next step for us. Deciding to move in together was a big deal for us. Getting our home set up turned into a bit of an adventure. From the hilarious attempts at putting together furniture to the friendly arguments about where to put stuff, every step showed us the nitty-gritty of blending two lives into one home. Eric's love for a clean and simple look clashed with my fondness for sentimental items and a bit of cozy chaos. Figuring out who does what around the house brought its own set of challenges. Simple things like taking out the trash or doing the dishes sometimes turned into little arguments, and finding middle grounds and talking things out. Handling money together was another layer of real-life stuff. Splitting bills, doing grocery shopping together. It meant having honest chats about how we handle money, what our goals are, and figuring out compromises for our shared future. But in the midst of all the struggles, these challenges became the stories we'd laugh about later. Late-night talks about who forgot to buy milk or the shared giggles while attempting a complicated recipe made our everyday moments into shared memories. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. As the newness wore off, we faced the regular conflicts that come with sharing a space. Disagreements about how clean the house should be, the need for personal space, or even arguing about TV volume, but we persevered through everything. When Eric decided to propose, it wasn't just a moment, it was a surprise-filled, love-soaked experience that caught me totally off guard. It all started on a regular Saturday. Eric suggested we take a drive to the countryside, a spontaneous adventure that sounded like a fun idea. As we cruised through scenic roads, I could sense something was up, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Our destination turned out to be this cute bed and breakfast surrounded by hills and pretty wildflowers. The setting was already giving off vibes that something special was about to happen, but I had no clue about the magic in store. We wandered through the BB's garden, and Eric led me to a quiet gazebo decked out with fairy lights and sweet-smelling roses. It was like a scene from a romance movie, and I felt my heart racing as I wondered what was going on. With a smile, Eric started recounting our journey together, from our awkward first meeting in the college bookstore to our cozy diner dates and nature escapades. Each word felt like a hug, bringing back all those awesome memories. Then he got down on one knee, holding a small box with a shiny ring inside. Time stood still as he spilled his heart out, sharing his love, admiration, and dreams for our future. The ring sparkled in the sunlight, a symbol of his commitment. Caught between happy tears and pure joy, I heard him pop the big question, "Will you marry me?" Of course, I said yes. The grin on Eric's face was priceless, and we sealed the deal with a sweet kiss surrounded by nature. But the surprises didn't end there. Eric had set up a cozy dinner under the stars with our favorite dishes and a bottle of champagne. We savored the moment, soaking in the fact that we were starting a new chapter together. Our proposal will forever be a memory I will cherish. Eric's folks took to me like family right from the start. Their friendliness and genuine care made me feel like I belonged. Whether it was digging into meals, celebrating holidays, or just hanging out, their kindness created this vibe of love that went beyond the typical parent-kid connection. On my side, my parents saw in Eric a son-in-law who not only got our family values, but also brought his own cool stuff to the table. Eric's honesty, respect, and love for me were right in line with what we valued, making our families click on a level that wasn't just surface deep. Family get-togethers were full of amazing jokes, shared tales, and just a whole bunch of love and support. The way our families clicked was surprising, but also amazing. Having supportive families was like having a rock to lean on during tough times, be it working through the early parts of our relationship, tackling challenges, or celebrating big moments. Knowing our families had our backs gave us a solid base. I know you're probably wondering if everything was going so well. Then why and how did I cheat? Here's how it happened. Eric was away for the weekend helping out his sister who just had a baby. I stayed back home due to a pesky cold. I didn't want to risk getting the baby sick, so I decided to skip the visit and promised Eric's sister that I'd make it up to her when I was feeling better. Figuring I could at least be productive, I headed to the grocery store to grab some essentials before heading back home. I had quit my job, so I was a bit of a homebody nowadays. The local grocery store in our not-so-big town was buzzing with familiar faces. Surprise, surprise, I bumped into Alan, Eric's best friend, and the guy who'll be the best man at our wedding. No big deal in our tight-knit community. Running into someone you know is just part of the deal. Alan and I have always had a friendly thing going on because of his close ties with Eric. So when he spotted me, he gave a friendly hello. After a quick catch-up, he insisted on giving me a ride home, and I said sure. Our town's not huge, so these chance encounters are pretty common. Now, Alan's known for being a bit of a flirt. But on this day, feeling a bit cheeky, I decided to play along. The easy banter was fun and made me laugh. When he dropped me off, the joking continued, and on a whim, I threw out an invite for coffee. Alan agreed and came in for coffee. We were just talking, shooting the breeze, and things took a turn. Before I knew it, I messed up and cheated on Eric with Alan. Panic set in. What if Eric found out I betrayed him with his best friend? Alan tried to reassure me, saying we could keep it under wraps, and for a moment it helped calm my nerves. But eventually I asked Alan to leave so I could have some time to think. As I pondered it all overnight, I considered the idea that maybe if Eric didn't know, it wouldn't hurt him. However, Alan hinted he wanted more. Now call me stupid or idiotic. But in a moment of poor judgment, I made a significant error that has become one of the most regrettable mistakes of my life. Without giving it much thought, I impulsively texted Alan, expressing agreement with the idea of keeping our actions a secret. In a misguided attempt to avoid consequences, I told myself that what Eric didn't know wouldn't cause him pain. Alan was glad and he visited the next day, a Saturday, and ended up staying the night all till Sunday until he had to leave because Eric was coming. Eric came and I pretended as if all was fine and as if I hadn't just been cheating on him with his best friend. I continued pretending like that and also continued my affair with Alan. During that period, we started planning our wedding. Planning a wedding sounds like a fairy tale, but let me tell you, it's more like navigating a crazy maze of stress and unexpected challenges. Eric and I jumped into this whole adventure dreaming of a beautiful celebration, totally clueless about what was coming our way. At first, picking a venue and setting a date got us all pumped up. But reality hit hard when we dove into the nitty-gritty of wedding planning. Budget suddenly became a big deal, making us make some tough calls about the guest list, decorations, and how big we could go. Our dreams met reality and we realized that not all our dreams would be possible, testing our ability to give and take. After all, you can't eat your cake and have it. Finding the perfect vendors turned into a mission impossible. Choosing a photographer who got our vibe and a caterer that satisfied everyone felt like threading a needle. So many options left us questioning our choices and, at times, just feeling plain overwhelmed. Family expectations brought in a whole new level of drama. Balancing opinions on traditions, who gets invited, and even what to wear became a tricky dance. Every decision felt like a tightrope walk, trying to stick to traditions while making sure the day screamed us. Besides the logistics, the emotional toll hit us like a ton of bricks. As the wedding date inched closer, the pressure got real. Dealing with societal expectations and wanting everything to be perfect created tension between us. Small arguments turned into big debates, putting our relationship under strain. Unexpected stuff, like weather issues and last-minute cancellations, threw us for a loop. Navigating these surprises tested our relationship's strength, teaching us to roll with the punches and find joy in the unplanned. But hey, in the middle of the chaos, there were moments that made it all worthwhile. The laughs during DIY projects, the heart-to-heart talks about our future, and being each other's rock during tough times were reminders of the love keeping us going. I know I sound like a hypocrite considering I was cheating on Eric during that time. But to be honest, I loved him. I don't know why I made the mistake I did. During that time, I noticed that Eric was a little standoffish with me, but I didn't put much thought to it as I thought it was just the stress from planning the wedding. The stress had gotten to everybody, and we were a lot more short-tempered. Finally, the big day was here, and amid all the hustle and bustle, our wedding was a beautiful celebration of love and happiness. The morning nerves and last-minute checks gave way to a feeling of excitement as we realized this was the moment we'd been gearing up for. The venue, decked out with our chosen decorations, buzzed with the sounds of friends and family who came to share in our joy. The air was filled with all sorts of feelings: excitement, jitters, and just pure happiness. Slipping into my wedding dress and Eric putting on his suit, the reality of the day hit us. We stole a few quiet moments together, sharing glances and words that said everything without saying much. The ceremony loomed ahead, and we were ready to say our vows and kick off this new chapter together. The ceremony itself was a roller coaster of emotions. Our personal vows were very beautiful and emotional, and swapping rings sealed the deal, a promise of love and sticking together. Surrounded by our nearest and dearest, the moment was powerful. Once we said our I do's and had that first married kiss, we walked out as a couple, greeted by cheers and claps. The reception started with tasty food, good tunes, and heartfelt toasts. The dance floor became a place of laughter and joy, and we danced away, soaking up the company of those there to celebrate with us. Amid all the fun, we grabbed a few quiet moments to take in the fact that we were now officially husband and wife. The sheer joy of sharing this day with the people we loved created memories we'd cherish. Eric had seemed so happy that day you wouldn't have even known he knew I was cheating. He perfectly pretended as if all was fine. When it was time for our honeymoon, I was buzzing with excitement. I paid the cash for it beforehand because Eric had some issues with his credit card. No biggie, he promised to pay me back, and I knew he'd stick to his word. Eric isn't the type to casually borrow money, and when he does, he always squares up. Considering Eric's well-off background and solid job, I had confidence in him. This played a part in my decision to take a break from work and be a stay-at-home wife. With some leftover cash from my last job paycheck, I chipped in for our honeymoon. It might not have been a huge contribution, given Eric's financial stability, but it felt good to share in making our special trip happen. Before I paid for our honeymoon, Eric and I got into a bit of a heated discussion about how long it should be. Eric, coming from a well-off background, wanted a more extensive trip, exploring different places. For him, it wasn't a big deal financially. On the other hand, I knew that if we went on a longer honeymoon, I'd have to hit pause on my affair with Alan. Not wanting that, I argued for a more chill 1 or 2 week honeymoon, emphasizing settling down. After some back and forth, Eric finally gave in, and we agreed on a compromise. But to keep my affair under wraps, I made a pretty iffy move. After paying for the honeymoon, I quietly spilled the beans to Alan about where we were going. The plan was for him to fake a vacation with his wife so he could bump into me and Eric without Eric catching on. Looking back, I can see I made a bunch of wrong decisions. The honeymoon destination Eric and I picked wasn't exactly budget-friendly. It was a fancy and pricey spot. Alan, being mindful of his wallet, got worried about affording it without going broke. I brushed off his concerns, blaming Eric's credit card issues for not contributing much lately. I told Alan that once Eric sorted his card problems and handed over some cash, I'd pay him back for the whole trip. Now I realize it was a messed up web of lies, going against the honesty that should be at the core of any relationship. Bringing Alan into the mix was a very messed up thing. And the money side of things just added more mess. Things went kinda as planned on our honeymoon. After a few days at our spot, guess who we bumped into? Alan and his wife. Eric was pretty surprised, but Alan smoothly spun a story about how they decided on a trip due to his wife dealing with some stress. Eric bought it without prying much, and it seemed like everything was rolling smoothly. But handling meetups with Alan turned out trickier than I thought. To make it work, whenever Eric was busy or out, or even if I just sneaked out for a bit, I'd check in with Alan to make sure his wife wasn't around, and then I'd head to his place. About a week into our honeymoon, with some days still left, I started noticing that Eric was becoming a bit distant and cold towards me. When I questioned him about it, he waved it off, claiming he was just tired. Sensing a chance to meet up with Alan, I suggested he take some rest and maybe some meds while I went out alone to give him some space. Eric agreed, and I headed out. I texted Alan to check if his wife was around, and he said she was out at the pool. So I went over to Alan's, we drank for a bit, and then became intimate. I voiced my concerns to Alan about Eric's behavior, but Alan brushed it off and told me that Eric had always been like that, right from when they were kids. Alan explained that Eric had a naturally charming personality, but there were times when he needed to recharge and take a step back from people. So I got what Alan was saying because I had observed the same thing in Eric. So I decided to put my concerns about Eric's behavior out of my mind. Alan and I continued our thing for a few more hours until Alan received a text from his wife, asking if I had left. Both of us were taken aback. I saw the text myself, and it struck me as odd because his wife wasn't supposed to know I was there. Alan tried to play it cool, asking his wife what she meant, but she didn't buy it. She accused Alan of cheating on her with me, and I was utterly stunned. Not wanting to face a confrontation with Alan's wife, I quickly grabbed my bag and left. The burning question in my mind was, how did she find out? And if she knew, did Eric know too? I was pretty confident Eric was in the dark because they didn't really communicate much. However, when I returned to our hotel room, it was empty. I assumed Eric had gone out, so I texted him to ask where he was. He replied that he was at home. It seemed a bit strange, and I thought he might be joking, heading out to buy something. But as hours passed with no sign of Eric, I started to worry. Finally checking the hotel room wardrobe, I realized Eric's clothes were gone. Panic started to set in, and I messaged Eric, responding to his earlier text, asking which home. He simply replied, "Which home do you think?" Feeling totally lost and tearing up, I tried giving Eric a call, but he wouldn't answer. So I sent him a text, asking why he went back home without me and if he wasn't having a good time. I attempted the pity and confusion angle, hoping for some understanding. But Eric wasn't having it. He shot back, saying he knew about Alan and urged me to quit faking confusion. He told me to check the bedside table, where I'd find divorce papers. I turned to the bedside table, and there it was. Folks, divorce papers staring right at me. Shocked, I couldn't hold back the tears. I tried calling Eric, hoping he'd hear the crying and maybe feel a hint of sympathy, but he wouldn't pick up. Instead, he sent me a detailed text, laying it all out. He knew about me and Alan, and he wanted a divorce. Eric labeled me a cheater and a betrayer, calling me heartless. He couldn't fathom how I could carry on with his best friend while pretending everything was fine. Eric added that he had spilled the beans to Alan's wife too, and he believed she'd be dumping Alan as well. In a final blow, he expressed hope that I'd be stuck wherever I was and that Alan would face the same fate. Eric unleashed bombshell after bombshell on me. He admitted to knowing about me and Alan for a while, revealing that the credit card issue he mentioned was just a lie to make me use my savings for the honeymoon. No, he dropped the bomb that he had no intention of paying me back, and he was aware I couldn't afford a flight ticket home now. Eric declared that I was no longer welcome in his house, and he planned to mail my belongings to my parents. If, by some miracle, I managed to get money for a flight, he warned me to steer clear of his house by at least 5 feet. I was so overwhelmed I didn't know how to handle it. Eric followed through on every threat he made. I cried myself to sleep, and when I woke up in the afternoon, my parents called. Not only had Eric spilled everything to them, but he also sent my belongings back to them. I had to plead and cry before they sent me money for a plane ticket to come back home. Still hoping for a miracle, I tried calling Eric, but he wouldn't answer. The only text he sent told me to sign the divorce papers for an easier court process, and then he went silent. After getting the money from my parents, I flew home, going straight to my parents' house, knowing Eric was still furious. My parents were beyond angry because I had wrecked my marriage in barely 2 weeks, and here I was back in their house. I apologized like crazy, but they brushed it off, saying Eric deserved the apology. They dropped another bomb. Eric not only called them, but also sent screenshots of my chats with Alan. This meant Eric had some evidence of my affair. This all unfolded just a few weeks ago, and here I am at my parents' place, waiting for the divorce proceedings to be scheduled. I'm immensely grateful for my parents. Without them, I'd probably be stuck on the streets. They've been my support system, providing everything I need, including financial help. So I attempted to find a job, but it's no walk in the park in this small town, as I mentioned before. Eric's family, being upper class and influential, pretty much runs the show. They have a stronghold on most businesses here. Imagine the challenge of job hunting in that scenario. Thankfully, my dad pulled some strings, and my aunt, who owns a local diner, offered me a position as a waitress. As for Alan, he managed to scrape together enough for a flight home. However, he and his wife are in the midst of a divorce. Word on the street is that she's in a better financial position, giving her the upper hand in the proceedings. Sharing my story here is my way of hoping someone learns from my mistakes. It's also a way for me to find some peace and respect amidst this mess. I'm fully aware of how wrong my actions were, and I know there's no undoing it. Eric hasn't forgiven me, and our communication is strictly divorce-related. I'm in a tough spot, but I'm optimistic that I can pull through one day. Thanks for lending an ear.